So, hello. Um, if you're wondering why I haven't been on, it's because I just did a whole show and I forgot to hit record. So, let's do this again. Actually, I didn't forget to hit record. I forgot to hit stream. I hit record. So, there's a tape of this. Um, Let me give you an update on the channel. Douglas Beaumont has not dropped the copyright strike. And it's perfectly fine for him to have made a copyright claim, even though I disagree with that. I would have gladly edited him out. He didn't have that much to do with the video. He was just the jumping off point, the premise was stuff that he said about the New American, the Catholic, the Oxford Catholic Study Bible, New American Bible, um, or the New American Bible, Oxford Catholic Study Bible, however you want to word it. Uh, it was just he said some things that just weren't true about it, and I countered it. I did make a little fun of him, although I have watched it recently and it wasn't that bad what I said. But he is not letting it go, which, since I did a counterclaim, means it's probably going to go into a lawsuit of some kind, which means I could lose this channel permanently. Um, if that happens, I don't just lose this channel, I lose all affiliate channels to this email. And I don't know if I would still have access to watch YouTube. So, that being the case, if that happens, I'd probably just move on to another platform. But let's hope that doesn't happen. Let's hope he either drops it or he lets it go or whatever. But we'll see. If it escalates, it escalates. Um, Other than that, I've had a rough day. And I just put a lot into a show that didn't stream. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play this video, play a little bit of the Kip Davis stuff, and then I'm going to call it a night. I had done the Kip Davis thing. I was about to move on to the next video when I noticed uh, it wasn't streaming. So, oops. Um, but hey, gives me a chance to redo this little viewing of my video from my alt channel. I will explain some context to some stuff, and then from there we will do a little bit of Kip Davis, and this will be the two videos for tonight. That's my garage gym, by the way. Okay, so you might know me from another channel, possibly from another platform. Much larger channel than this one. What I'm editing out are the sound of the board, specifically the wheels. They make a clack sound, and it actually spiked really high. Didn't sound good. So every time that it does that, I actually cut out the sound. So, short version on that is I might be getting sued. I made fun of a Catholic apologist, Douglas Beaumont, and he's not letting it go, which is unchristian-like and uncharitable. Just calling it like it is. Also, we're Catholics, so he's actually supposed to bring it to me first. And if we can't settle it, he should go to a priest, not go to a lawyer, and not do the copyright strike. In our community, as YouTubers who do comments on each other's videos, what he did is completely uncool. But besides from him breaking the bro code, the other problem is that he didn't send me an email asking, see if I would edit him out. The video's monetized, but I don't have any monetization on this channel. I'm not set up for it. I don't make money off of my videos, not yet. I don't have a large enough audience draw. I can do memberships, I can do other things like that, but this particular video has not made me a single penny, as none of my videos have, not yet. So him going after me is stupid on that regard anyway. On top of that, it was with fair use. I used about 5 minutes of his footage, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little less, And I used it as a jumping off point to make my points, which was correcting him on what he said about the NAB and about the Oxford Catholic Study Bible. He just got a lot of facts wrong. And I felt like it was my right as a YouTuber, as a fellow Catholic, to correct him. He disagreed, apparently. But again, he didn't send me an email asking to edit him out. He didn't send me an email asking to correct. He didn't ask to come on my channel to correct what I said. He didn't invite me on his to do that. He didn't do a response video, nothing like that. He simply copyright struck my video. He didn't do a copyright claim. He didn't do a takedown request. He didn't do a monetization request or a don't monetize request, whatever that thing is where they get the money, but your video makes them money. He didn't do any of that. He went straight to copyright claim, which is a very low blow considering he makes content not too unsimilar from mine on his channel. So, yeah, broke the bro code, broke the YouTube code, creator code, the unofficial YouTube creator code, and it might, whoops. It might turn into a legitimate lawsuit. So, but that doesn't mean I'm done. I've gone through a lot of my life, and this channel's kind of about that. And if I lose, like I said, if I lose the case, or since I don't have money, I can't afford a lawyer, if I can't afford the flight, or I don't get the message for the flight, and I don't know when the trial is because he doesn't have my personal info. So, if no one can serve me, the case goes on without me. I could lose in abstention or whatever it is when you're not there, and then there you go. I don't have a YouTube channel anymore, and I don't know how it works if I can still access and watch YouTube, or if it's just like I'm completely banned from YouTube altogether. I don't know, but that's what's going on with him. And like I said, as a Catholic, that's not how we were supposed to do things. So he's not being very Catholic at all. And about the road back, I'm giving myself 40 days to fix my life. I did a 30-day challenge about a month and a half ago. And for those who are watching on that channel, yeah, I lost the weight. I got there. I just stopped recording because I got this heart. I think I stopped recording on day 22 or day 25. It wasn't like I never got toward 30. I just stopped recording. I still had like a little butterball gut thing going on, and it didn't feel good. Going through a separation with my wife and taking care of my wife's back in China, by the way. My dad. Basically, let's give you the backstory. Over 10 years ago, I was super fat, and I had a 14A1C. I was diabetic, and I had lost my. This was around between the years 30 and 33. I had been a personal trainer before that from 25 to 30. I then went to go work for a really good friend of mine, and he went out of business. When he went out of business, then he didn't go out of business because of like not being profitable or anything like that. He ran trucks. He ran more trucks than he could afford. He didn't listen to the board. He kept going, and then the truck started breaking down. So instead of going through the process of cutting back, which we had already kind of done, he decided to close business and go work for someone else. But when he did that, I lost my job. And at the same time, I was dating a person that really wasn't suited for me to date. So I made some bad life choices, and I went from being an athlete to getting close to 300 pounds. Last I weighed myself was between 260 and 280. So let's say maybe 280. And I'm 5'7", so I'm very short. And yeah, so that didn't go well. I started getting what amounted to leg cramps, and eventually it wasn't leg cramps, it was actually diabetic muscle loss. My muscle was dying, it was being starved. My sugar raised up to a 14A1C, which if you don't know, like 12 is bad. like 10 is bad, 12 is like death, 14 is you're getting close. So my blood was basically mush. Um, it was just all sugar. And so my muscles, and I used to have big weightlifter leg muscles, and they were gone, the hamstrings especially. So I had to rebuild that muscle, and it was a very long process. It took me 6 months to be able to walk a mile, um, but it took me from 6 months to the end of the year, it took me about the whole year total for me to be able to run 6 miles. So to walk a mile took about 6 months. To run 6 miles took about a year. And there's a religious aspect to that, which I'm willing to discuss more in this channel, but yeah. Ability to walk. Um, prayed to God and decided to change my life. Part of that praying to God had to do with if I gained the ability to walk back, I would go back to church. I stopped eating sugar, stopped eating bread, and I got in great shape. And if you're watching this on one of my larger platforms or channels on somewhere, you might see this edited with photos and everything. But if you're watching this on my, on I guess my main now, that hasn't happened yet. It's just precautionary. And like I said, if I lose this channel, I lose all channels associated, including my alt, which sucks. But I know there's other brands out there, other platforms that I can go to if I have to. I hope it doesn't come to that, though. It's just going to be raw. It's just me talking to you. And yes, this is sweat. I just got done doing cardio. I lost my ability to walk, and it took me 6 months to get it back. 6 months starting off with 1 minute on the treadmill every day until I got to 2 minutes, then 3, and I'm talking at like 1 mile, 2 miles an hour. By the end, and that was extremely painful. What I'm not talking about there is what gave me the courage to do this. This is before the TEDx and all that other stuff came out about diabetes being reversible. So this is before it was common knowledge. They were still giving the advice of eating less fat and eating more healthy grains would help control your diabetes. That was the advice they were giving at the time. That's actually very deadly advice for a diabetic. So I, desperate not to die, went and I did a ton of research. I'm a philosophy major. I dropped out of college one class, which is I think 2 credits. At the time, it had been 5 hours before graduating. And so I've been trained how to do research. I know how to do research. So that's what I did is I did research. And I found an article from Florida State University, about their diabetic football players. And it was sponsored by Gatorade, of all things. And the research showed that when they did powerlifting, run rep maxes at their max weight, the cell walls that normally wouldn't open would automatically open, and it would suck in all the sugar, keeping the blood sugar, the glucose level down, which in turn, over time, would lower the A1C. Combine that with what I was learning from more conspiratorial type articles about how bad veganism and vegetarianism is for diabetics because of the high carb intake, not because of being a vegan or a vegetarian, but because of the high carb intake in those diets. I decided to cut out bread to the minimum of what you need because your brain still needs carbs. Your body will actually make its own carbs, especially if you're of the Native American or African American type. We have higher insulin sensitivity, so our body will produce the food that we need, the nutrients we need, because we come from areas where there wasn't bread. Bread is a European thing. So just how most Asian and Jewish people can't handle milk, most Native American and African people can't handle high amounts of bread without having negative effects like gluten allergies or diabetes. So I I ran with it. I was like, if this, I told the doc, the doctor gave me metformin, and I was like, look, I'm going to do this without metformin. If I'm wrong in 3 weeks, if I'm wrong, if I'm not dead, I'll go on metformin and I'll go on to insulin. But I've seen what that does to people. I saw what it did to my mom. I saw what it did to everybody. It's like, I'm not going to do this stupidly. I don't want that. I don't want to lose a leg. I don't want to lose an arm. I don't want to, die that way. I don't want to lose a kidney. They're like, all right, do what you're going to do. But you agree that if it doesn't work, okay. I was like, all right. So the next blood work came in, and I had more than halved the A1C. I went from like 14. I went from a 14 to like a 12 or 10. I went from that to a 7. And they're like, yeah, no, that's legit results. You keep doing what you're doing. By the end of the year, I was down to a 5 A1C, which for a diabetic is amazing. Um, and I'll stop that story there, and we'll continue on with this, and we'll talk about the rest as we go. End of that year, I was running 6 miles a day. And then while I was fixing my life, I met my wife. So let's talk about that. I started listening to Jordan Peterson and Clean Your Room, that kind of thing. And I had ignored him for a long time, but I started listening to his lectures because I was doing this thing where I was doing iTunes U and a few other free college courses in a prep to go back to school to see if I was ready mentally, emotionally. The reason for that is that I left school because of a cancer scare. So I wanted to make sure I was ready for it emotionally, especially considering what I had just gone through with the diabetes. And that's how I discovered Jordan Peterson. I didn't discover him through his infamous confrontation with a student. And I had actually not listened to a lot of his stuff when it was recommended because of that. Because I was like, I don't care about that kind of stuff, the wokeism stuff at the time. Anyway, or the fighting against the counterculture stuff at the time. So I go back to once I lose the weight, I go back to personal training. Except I don't have 5 customers a day like I used to. I have like 1 customer a week. And of the 2 regulars that I was able to get back, only one of them was paying me enough to make a living. And I'm going to call him a friend, Josh, said, "Hey, I don't really want to do training this time. I taught him martial arts. I taught him a few other stuff. He's like, I want to go hiking." And I'm like, "You want to go hiking?" He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "I don't hike." He's like, "I don't care." I'm like, "Okay." And so we started hiking, and it was great. At least once a week, we would do a 6 hour hike. And then at least every other day, we would do a 2 hour to 3 hour hike. But we would do, like I said, on the weekends or on whatever day he had off, we would go and we would do 6 hours. I'm sorry, and then 6 hours. I think we did a 12 hour. Is our longest one, and it was awesome. And so of course I was feeling great. I was feeling great. I was in great shape. We would run, we would hike, we'd do all that kind of stuff. And I was on OkCupid, and my wife hit me up, and I was like, "Wow, this girl reached out to me." We went on a date. She said I wasn't her type, but then a few weeks later, she hit me up again, and she was like, "I need a personal trainer. I need someone to show me how to play tennis." And I'm like, "I don't play tennis." And kind of like how Josh was with the hiking, she goes, "Well, you'll learn and you'll teach me." And I'm like, "Okay." And she was dating a doctor at the time, a doctor or a lawyer, I don't remember which. But she was dating someone at the time who was much more successful than I was. And I trained her for a while. They broke up. We went on a date. I took her to the wrong place, which is fine. And then she went on a long trip, And on the trip, she got into a fight with the person she went on a trip with. It was a lady. She went on. She got into a fight with them, and she called me. She's like, "You're the only number I know, and I got to talk to someone." And I'm like, "Okay." And so she told me what happened, and we ended up having a conversation. And when she got on the road, she called, and we just kept talking, and then we started dating from there, and you can get the rest. And she convinced me to get a more proper job. So when we got married, she was like, "I'm not going to marry a personal trainer." I'm like, "You dated a personal trainer?" And she's like, "Well, that's different." So I applied for two places. I applied for the police force, and I applied for um, a, I guess I can say, at a car dealership. And the car dealership said yes first. So I ended up being a car salesman for 6.5, 7 years. And I had a good career, but it cost me some of my health. And when my dad got sick, it cost me a lot of my time. So after about 6 months of working there, my wife decided um, that, well, she got a promotion at her job. So she said she didn't want to quit. And I was like, "That's fine. I don't want to live here. I want to go to China." And she's like, "Are you serious? Like, who wants to go to China?" I'm like, "I want to go to China." So I make plans. I save up money to quit. And everything's good to go. And the week I'm going to quit, I go into work. My dad has his incident. And so it derails all of our plans. Then I go to China for a short amount of time. I come back. I had someone stay with him while I was away. And then COVID happens the day I come back. Yeah. And so my hobby, the day I come back from China, by the way, like YouTube and weightlifting and training customers all went away. So I gained some of the weight back. Then my dad got sicker. My wife and I separated. I never got COVID, by the way, the entire time, which was awesome. And my dad didn't start getting COVID until recently. He got COVID this year and he got COVID last year. And I decided to take care of my dad full time. After the whole pandemic thing. That was now 8 months ago. I'm now broke. So let's talk about that. Oh. So I was already planning on leaving the job when in July. So this was January. It was July that I was planning on leaving. I wanted to pay off all my debt, and I was making enough money in my job that I could pay off all my debt by July. So I made a plan to quit, and I was going to go to work and be happy about it. And I was going to work for 8 months. Oh, for 6 months. And I was going to give a 2 week notice, and everything was going to be good. You know, the whole thing. Everything very respectful and leave on good terms. And then got into a situation. And just to be clear, I wasn't fired. I really did quit. I could go back to a position I didn't want to be in under a manager I didn't want to work with. And just to be very clear, the manager's not a bad guy. He's a great guy. But there's personality classes, and we have different values. And when you work at a dealership, you live with these people. It's not like you can just ignore the other people there. This is your life. You know, you're there anywhere from 10 hours to 13 hours a day. Even on your day off, if one of your customers shows up, if you want that sale, you're going to go and do it. So I was like, I don't want to spend another 7 years under this guy. But that's not why I quit. That's a reason for my quitting, but that's not why I quit. The state, I was trying to get my dad a paraprofessional, a permanent one. And we kept on having hiccups. And I said, "Well, could I do it?" And they're like, "Yeah. I mean, your dad his condition more than qualifies. You seem to qualify, apply, and we'll see what happens." I'm like, "Okay." And so it got to about a week before I was going to quit, maybe a week and a half. And they're like, "Yeah, he definitely qualifies. You can do this." I'm like, "Are you sure? Because I'm planning on quitting my job. I can quit my job and I'll get paid by the state to take care of my dad. Like that's real." And they're like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's no reason outside of a very rare exception that you would be disqualified and that wouldn't happen. That would be an extreme case." I'm like, "Okay." So, uh, me and my boss, who I was friends with, I mean, I call him a friend. I still think of him as a friend to this day. We were involved in a disagreement. Part of it had to do with religion. It did. But more of it had to do with he just wanted me out of the position that I was in, and he wanted me back on the sales floor, which is respectable. I get it. But there was some miscommunication going on. I had relied on two or three trusted people to communicate with other people in the background, uh, and I was communicating directly with a customer, but someone representing the customer was talking to my GM, my boss. So there was miscommunication because I was hearing one thing from the actual customer. He was hearing something from the parent, from the father. By the way, these are grown adults, okay? And so he's hearing something different from the third party. He then confronts me. I then tell him what's going on. He doesn't believe me. He calls me a liar. There's another person involved, and he says the wrong name, and I'm like, that didn't happen. That person wasn't there. It that person was there. He just said the wrong name. He said someone who I used to work with. So I was like, that person's not there. He said a different person's name. Fine, misunderstanding. But then I had a misunderstanding with him when I was talking about who I was talking to. And so I was communicating to someone directly, and he was going back and forth for me. I was delegating. And so after everything was done, after I quit, I'm walking out, and the person comes to me. He goes, "Hey, what happened?" Well, I explained to him the situation. He's like, "Dude, I was talking to him. I was asking the question." He said, I said, "Okay, so you did?" He's like, "Yeah, man, I can go clear this up." I'm like, You can't clear it up, man. I already quit." He's like, "Oh man," and I'm like, and I just stopped. I don't know why. Something told me to stop. And I'm like, "Are you sure you were really talking to this person?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I said, and I say the guy's name, and he's like, "Oh no, I was going to this other person." And I'm like, "You got me fired." And he's like, "Well, I mean, did you get fired?" I'm like, "Well, you got me quitted." But I still, like, you put me in an impossible position where it was either I quit or I changed positions, and I didn't want to. I didn't want to go back to work under a certain person. But like I said, I was already leaving to take care of my dad. Well, I leave. And I shouldn't say he got me fired because I didn't get fired. I should say he cost me my job. But I'm the one who made the decisions. It was my decision. I own it. And then a month goes by and I still don't have funding. And I'm like, "Hey, what's going on?" So I start talking to my dad's previous uh, nurse, and the previous nurse would only come once a week, because we couldn't qualify higher than that. And he's like, "Well, talk to these people." So I talked to certain people. I ended up going through so many routes, like insurance. And I had already gone through that throughout the 7 years. But I went through the insurance, I went through the state, I think I even tried a federal thing, I'm not sure. I tried different organizations. And I finally get the state to look directly. And they sent a representative, and they're like, "Hey, look, we did the investigation. You're fine. You can be a provider. The problem is your dad." And I'm like, "What do you mean? Like he's not sick?" Like he's like, "No, no, he's sick. Like he's definitely got the condition. The thing is that he's under a state retirement fund, and the state retirement system that he's under makes sure that he's always above the poverty line. And to qualify for any program here in the state of Texas, you have to be under the poverty line. Even $1 over disqualifies you. So it doesn't matter what your financial situation is, doesn't matter what your employment situation is. You didn't have to quit your job to do this. I know we told you you did, but you didn't. You don't. It turns out it wasn't your finances that were hurting this. And it wasn't the value of your house. It was simply his retirement. Sorry. And I'm like, there were certain guarantees I wouldn't have quit my job if there wasn't a guarantee for income, and they go, yeah, we know, and I'll I won't say what he said because he said it off the record, but that was that. So I went back to work, getting a part time job, and now, thanks to a fund that I'm setting up for my dad, it's already set up, but I need to have more income coming into it. So I'm going to turn it into a GoFundMe, maybe, depending on how things play out over the next few weeks. Um, I uh, I need to start looking for a better job because I need to go back to work full time and I need to earn a certain amount of minimum income for my situation, for my dad's situation, and for whatever's going on with me and my wife, whether she's my ex wife or my wife, and what's going on with my stepson. There's a certain amount of legal obligation that I have to everybody involved, so I got to earn a certain amount of money. I'm not making any money from YouTube, although I am monetized. Uh, and And that is very true. I can have memberships, and I don't have any members, but I have memberships, and I can get donations to my channel, and that's it. I couldn't get donations before when someone actually tried to send donations, which was kind of funny. But yeah, I got no income coming in from YouTube. The video that Douglas Beaumont copyright struck has made no income, zero income. So the fact that he's doing that is just really petty. Yeah, I need to fix my life. So if in 30 days I can get back in shape, in 40 days I can fix my life. And that's what this is about. This is my childhood skateboard. And I mean my childhood skateboard. I'm actually on my college board. So I'm using it as a stool. But I rebuilt this 4 days ago. 3 days ago, I got on the board for the first time in over, I don't know, 15 years, from 25, and I'm now 44. So almost 20 years. I think that's how math works. Yeah. And I've been skating it every day. And I'm going to skate it every day, just like I, 10 years ago, ran or walked on the treadmill every day for 1 minute, every day doubling up, until I can do 40 minutes on the board, 40 minutes on my bike, and 40 minutes either running or hiking, and see what kind of shape that gets me into. At the same time, I'm going to be applying for better jobs. I want to fix my finances and I want to get rid of my debt. I have more debt than I want to have right now. So I need to get rid of that. And I'm going to be trying to go back to school. And I want to see what I can fix and repair about my life in 40 days. Maybe it'll be a success, maybe it won't. But the point is, at the end of 40 days, I'll be in a better place than I am now. So, if I can rebuild this Walmart skateboard from the 1980s into a decent cruiser. By the way, it works amazing. Amazing. Now, I took it out this morning and wow, wowzers, it is, it rides better than it ever had before. Basically, the two big store brand, I have one from Walmart and I have one from, I guess, from Academy. They had really crappy bearings. So I replaced the bearings. I had replaced the tires before, but I didn't replace the bearings. I replaced the bearings. New bearings, new tires on one of them, new trucks. Wow. Wow. It rides amazing. I can rebuild my life. I want you to come along with me. I'll be doing updates. It's not going to be daily, but I'll be doing updates. Maybe I'll put up some. All right. That's good there. I like that. I like that there. Okay, let's go now to Kip Davis. And then from there, we are going to call it a night because, like I said, I had already done this whole show and I'm a little tired now. Do, do, do. Oh. Oh. We're just going to do a little bit because, yeah, like I said, I already did a whole show on it. I don't even know I can repeat everything. So there's part of a reason why I want to do this is because I want to show how the atheist community handles in-house disagreements and
Where
also
to?
highlight that atheists do have in-house disagreements. Oh, okay. Because I love to point fingers at Christians for disagreeing with each other, but they do too. Okay, so here's the deal. Dr. Kip Davis said a thing. Godless engineer didn't like it. Another celebrity scholar disagreed with him. Godless engineer does a little bit of underhanded or dirty trick here. He edits an interview with a different scholar talking about the other scholar, but edits it as if they're talking about Kip. Get it? Got it? Okay.
Them is to super chat them. But at this with Dr. Boyarin, and I'll be jumping back and forth a little bit between his video, and I've got some slides.
Okay.
Because I love slides. So that's how we'll do this. I'm gonna put us down here. Let me know if you can hear it.
To a number of the claims made by Dr. Kip Davis. And these are going to be claims and statements made about Dr. Boyarin's scholarship. While Dr. Kip prefers to represent this as Dr. Carrier's scholarship, Dr. Carrier has merely cited the experts on these topics.
So, just right from the get-go, and I already mentioned something about this, right? I think it's important to point out that I certainly do disagree with Professor Boyarin in terms of how he's connecting traditions in the Talmud to the much earlier Second Temple period. That's where his and my biggest disagreement lies.
Mm-hmm.
But my issues with this video are about how Carrier is reading Boyarin, and then by extension, how Godless Engineer is reading Boyarin. And
so you get that. You're following it so far. Dr. Kip Davis' problem is with the other three people's interpretation of someone else's opinion.
Since both of them are non-experts in early Jewish literature, in second.
Okay. Two of them interpreting a third.
Temple Judaism, one really must always raise questions about how accurate and careful they are with their source citations. So, as I said, Carrier claims that he's just following what scholars are.
I don't like this inclination of Kip's, where everything has to be based on citation and other experts' opinions. It's not how scholarship works. It's not how intellectuality works. That's not how arguments work. At some point, yeah, you need good citation. At some point, you need proof. At some point, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. The most important part, especially with a doctorate, is that you bring something unique to the field. You have to have an original idea. You're allowed to have an opinion on a text you read. You don't have to be an expert in it. And it can be a translation, and you can have an opinion on that translation. Now, the weight of your opinion and how much it carries depends on A, credentials. If you don't have credentials, on how many people you can convince of your opinion. That's all that this is. It's two people trying to put more weight over their opinion, and Kip Davis is going to citations, and the other three are going to opinion and popularity of the opinion. It doesn't stay that simple. as you will see, because of the, let's call it dirty editing or media style, old media style editing, that sensationalism editing, if you will, that Godless Engineer uses. Well, that tricky editing turns it into kind of a dirty trick against Kip, and makes it seem as if they're responding to him instead of responding to the opinion. It gets a little bit ugly. And I don't know why Godless Engineer did that, especially if what he cut out is them actually addressing Kip directly. Then you shouldn't have cut that out, because right now it looks like you're being deceptive in your editing.
They're saying about any given issue, but there are several times when this has been demonstrated. You can watch some of my videos to see that this has been demonstrated to be just plainly false, incomplete, or one-sided. And this is one of these situations.
I'm very curious if Kip has read the entire Talmud. I'm asking that because I've read summaries of it. I've read Jewish study Bibles with rabbinical commentary. Currently reading the Art Scroll, like, I don't know what to call it, expanded commentary. I'm on Proverbs. I just bought Proverbs. I haven't read it yet. And I'm reading a lot of other stuff, so it's not like I'm going to get around to finishing it anytime soon. But I want to, after I get done with all these collections, assuming I still have income, assuming I still have a career, assuming I still have a life, assuming all that good stuff, I want to read through the Talmud, the Art Scroll edition. I really do. It's something that I want to do. I don't know if I'm ever going to get around to it. Like I said, I got a lot of books on the Church Fathers to read through still. But yeah.
Right? So I'm just going to continue.
Yep.
I want to be clear with my both my aspirations and my appreciation of Jewish interpretation of biblical literature. One of the greatest helps when I was discerning between faiths was listening again through iTunes U and some other stuff like that to a rabbinical course, and I believe it was either like they were about to graduate and become rabbis, and it was their lectures, and their debate time, or I guess discussion time. So you'd hear the lecture, and then you'd get the next video would be their discussion time, and I would just listen to that. I'd listen to maybe 2 years worth or 3 years worth of those commentaries, of those arguments and discussions, and it really helped my understanding of the Bible. That doesn't mean like I suddenly became Jewish or that I agreed with their interpretations, but it really opened my eyes to look at things from a non-Christian perspective, especially when it comes to the Old Testament, and have that perspective compare and contrast with the Christian interpretation, so you can see the differences and see where the arguments are. And it's really enlightening and adds a lot of color to your understanding of the Bible.
First, we will discuss what a Messiah is in pre-Christian Judaism. Dr. Kip Davis has a lot of issues with the context that Dr. Carrier places this concept of a Messiah in for the purposes of On the Historicity of Jesus. Most notably, it's the definition of what a Messiah is.
For example, with regards to the term Messiah, he
Hold
says,
on. So, Derek, I want you to pay really close attention, and everyone in the chat. I'm going to this is from one of my videos where I read out the definition that Richard Carrier has provided for Messiah. I want you to pay really, really close attention to what he says a Messiah is, and then we're going to have to kind of remember that when John presents this definition to Professor Boyarin to get his feedback on that. Okay, so pay close attention to this definition here. All right.
as this, I shall mean by Messiah the Hebrew word of which Christ is a translation. Any man, in fact, myth or prophecy who is A, anointed by the Hebrew God, to B, play a part in God's plan to liberate his chosen people from their oppressors, and C, restore or institute God's true religion. This means Anointed in any sense then understood, literally, figuratively, cosmically, or symbolically. Liberate in any sense then claimed, physically or spiritually. Oppressors in any sense then identified, whoever or whatever that may be. And religion in the fullest sense, cults, mores, sacred knowledge, and the resulting social order. And I specify only play a part, not necessarily bring to fruition. All Jewish kings and high priests were, of course, messiahs in the basic sense of being anointed to represent God. In the broad strokes, he's not wrong. But the primary problem here is this is not so narrowly how Jews understood the term Mashiach. Even as late as the early 2nd century, when the book of Daniel was written, he very clearly only understood this to mean the office of the ruling high priest when the term was used.
Like this idea from within his book is that this
So you get that, right? We're arguing about what Messiah actually means. How that plays into the argument doesn't quite make sense to me yet. I've watched much longer than what I'm watching right now, but exactly what they're disagreeing on about what Messiah means here is a little odd, obscure, esoteric maybe. Um, I agree with everything that Kip Davis is saying, and this is stuff that I have said on my channel, which is funny because I think Kip Davis' very first, I'm going to call it flirtation with me, was I have a terrible understanding of the Bible. This is exactly how I would explain what a Messiah is and how it works in both Judaism and how we should understand it when the New Testament Jews, which later become Christians, are looking back at Judaism, they're looking back at what Messiah is. So they're expecting a very different Messiah than what they got based on this understanding of Messiah, because there's many Messiahs. There's not just one. There's different Christ. There's different anointed ones. So I don't quite understand where they're disagreeing with what Kipps is saying, because this is what I myself say when I'm trying to explain what a Messiah is.
term,
Or Christ.
Mashiach, which means anointed one, which comes to mean Messiah, within the Dead Sea Scrolls.
And again, I am influenced through Jewish literature. I have read 2 Jewish Bible commentaries. I have read, not all, but at least most of the extended rabbinical commentary that's available through Art Scroll in their collection of you have the Shamash, you have then different. Yeah, it gets all the way. Anyway, the only thing I haven't done is read through the Talmud. I have some selections of Talmud verses that I have, some collections of that, but I haven't read through the Talmud. That's what I'm lacking in that area, outside of not speaking Hebrew.
Far and away, most of the time, this is with reference to prophets. This is just a way you talk about prophets. It's interesting when you read the scrolls because you start seeing Mashiachim, the plural form, you start seeing messiahs popping up all over the place. It's a fairly well-used term, and based on Jason's research, by and large, this is meant to indicate prophets of Yahweh as anointed figures. The word itself just means anointed one, right?
Well,
I'm going to pause it there for a second, Derek, and maybe bring you
And
back.
I want to be very clear. As part of my discerning process, when I was getting back into religion, and it's actually, I think I had just listened to this right before I did my very first video ever on religion on this channel. And you can still see it, and I'm seeing a lot of heresy. But I would, and I've said this before, I would listen to a Catholic Mass, an Orthodox Mass, a Protestant service, usually Baptist, Southern Baptist, and then I would listen to Steve Glosson. I would listen to Steve Glosson's sermons, and then I would listen to a rabbinical service. I tried to find a rabbinical service if I could find one online, and instead, what I ended up finding was these rabbinical uh, classes on how to become a rabbi. And they're from New York or the Bronx or something like that, and New Jersey, and they have that accent, and it's beautiful. It's some great stuff. So I'm doing that, and I'm reading. I think at the time it's the JBL, the JBS, Jewish Publication Society's Study Bible, and I'm doing that, and that was a fun experience. It's during that time, that run through of the Bible, when I think it was I had already read the Bible once all the way through, and I was on either my second or third time. That's when I ran into problems with Paul, because having a better understanding of the Jewish stuff and the Jewish understanding, Jesus fit fine with that. Like you could see that he was pushing against it, that it was revolutionary and all of that. And then you get to Paul. Well, once you learn the Jewish context, Paul doesn't fit anymore. Paul, the most Jewish of Jews, as I think he calls himself, or as he's called in the Bible, he is the problem. He is the demarcation point in Christian history. And that's when I started learning about, hey, well, so did Paul change what the gospel said? Like, you know what I mean? And then it's like, oh, it turns out Paul wrote first before the gospels. You're like, what? And you start learning all this stuff for the first time. Now it's kind of more common knowledge on YouTube and all of that. But if you go on to TikTok, they haven't gotten there yet. They're still back in the when was what written. So yeah, it's good stuff. It's important stuff, and the Jewish context really, really helps with the understanding and just how revolutionary the Christian context is.
Back on the stage here. Let's take that away for a second.
Okay.
So, were you following? Now this is John's cut. So he put the definition that I read and some of my disagreement with it at the start there, and then he found this clip from an interview I did, I think last year on Deep Jerk's podcast, where I was discussing some of these things, and in this clip I was describing what the term Mashiach, from which we get the word Messiah, how this word functions within the Dead Sea Scrolls. Were you able to follow that? Was that
It
kind of
sounded to me, my takeaway is that you are using, in a broader sense, that it doesn't just have the Messiah as we have in mind. It has broader implications, like Cyrus was, called a Messiah. He wasn't even Jewish. Here's this foreign king called a Messiah. So Messiah functions in many ways, and it's not always like what we have perceived as Christianity with Jesus. One could even argue that Paul plays a form of a Messiah because he sees himself as a prophet in the last days. So of course he's not the Christ, but he plays a Christ-like role in many ways. So,
and this is kind of part of the point. Like the point of what I was talking about in that second clip there, I was specifically talking, I said at the beginning, this is how the word functions within the Dead Sea Scrolls. I probably I overstated it a little bit. In that, yes, the term Mashiach in the scrolls is used to.
I have two different Dead Sea Scroll translations from two different periods of time, and I have read through majority of one, and I've skimmed through the other translation that I got maybe like 10 years later, 12 years later. They're both from Penguin, I believe, but just like I said, one's a slightly older translation and one's a more updated translation.
Describe like the divine human figure who is going to come and institute God's rule.
I think it says like updated on the front of the cover or something like that, and that's why I bought it. The changes were so minute. I'm like, I got ripped off.
And in the last days, it is still used to describe anointed leaders, but one of the ways that it's used with pretty significant frequency is to describe prophets. In particular, what Jewish readers of this time period would have called the former prophets, the Hebrew prophets. So these were the prophets from the Hebrew Bible. So that's kind of what I'm getting at. But I think it's important to clarify that and to put some.
Although I think it is longer. Like it has more sections. I think the real update was that they have translated more of the Dead Sea Scrolls, so there was more material for them to publish. I think that's what it was. I got them both back there. I could go look for them. I don't feel like it. I don't care. It's not that big of a deal to me. This is more interesting for, I guess, the drama of it than the scholarship of it.
Attention on that, because GE is going to ask Professor Boyarin a question about the way I presented the definition there, the way I presented the word relative to what's happening in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Okay, so we're just going to continue.
Had the opportunity to ask Dr. Daniel Boyarin himself about Dr. Carrier's definition of a Messiah in this context. Here is what he had to say about it. Would you consider this definition of a Messiah to be maybe too narrowly defined as far as the understanding of pre-Christian Jewish tradition, that the Messiah would be an anointed person by the Hebrew God? He would play a part in God's plan to liberate his chosen people from their oppressors and to restore or institute God's true religion.
Or God's true rule of the world.
Right.
Okay, so I'm gonna pull that back again. Did you catch how John presented Carrier's definition to Professor Boyarin? So
if I were to do it purely on a professional interviewee type thing, he's clearly wanting the guy to favor this whatever he's bringing to him. By the way, he's like, is it too narrow, or like, are you open to this being the case? And I don't see any problem with what he did there, but the definition was a lot smaller than what you said.
We're going to go up to the 25-minute mark here, which is a little bit longer than I wanted to go tonight on the show, but that's okay. We'll stop at the 25-minute mark, and then from there, I got an outro, and then we'll call it a night.
So what are you catching, or what am I missing?
Well, should we look at what the definition is again? I think that's useful. So let me just pull up my slides here. This is going to take me just a second. All right. Share the entire screen. There we go. Okay. I'm going to put that on the stage. All right. Okay. So here's the entire definition again.
Mm-hmm.
That's it there.
Right.
Now this is what John said. This is the definition that John presented to Professor Boyarin. That the Messiah would be an anointed person by the Hebrew God, that he would play a part in God's plan to liberate his chosen people from their oppressors and to restore or institute God's true religion or God's true rule in the world. There's a few things missing from that presentation of a definition based on what's. Do you want me to show you what's missing?
Yeah, show me what's missing.
So all of the red stuff is missing. So he does not talk about him as being a man, in fact, myth or prophecy, which I think is an important feature of Carrier's definition. And then he skips all this stuff about.
Yeah, but I read the definition earlier, and I myself stopped at the main point, which is, I think, what godless engineering is doing. While it may be dishonest in a video that's critical of you not to have your full statement, I think what he said technically matches what a anointed one is, just without any caveats or context. So this means the anointed one in any sense, then understood literally, figuratively, cosmically, or symbolically, liberate in any sense, then claimed physically or spiritually, oppressors in any sense, then identified whoever or whatever may be, and religion in the fullest sense, cult, mores, sacred knowledge, and the resulting social order, and I specify only play a part, not necessarily bring to fruition. All Jewish kings and high priests were, of course, messiahs in the basic sense of being anointed to represent God.
Anointed meaning in any sense then understood literally, figuratively, cosmically, or symbolically, liberate.
Yeah, but I'm thinking about, is it Nebuchadnezzar? Who's it that frees the Jews from Babylon or releases them from Babylon? He's also an anointed one. He's also a Messiah. So I think there's either something missing in this definition or something, or there's too much wordiness in the definition to get to what's actually being covered. But that's not, I don't know. I think it's the quote itself isn't bad. Like I'm okay with this definition anyway. It doesn't disagree with my understanding of what a Messiah is.
In
At
any
least not
sense
with the
then
Jewish understanding of it.
claimed physically or
I should say in the Jewish sense.
spiritually. Oppressors in any sense then identified, whoever or whatever they may be, and religion in the fullest sense, cults, mores, sacred knowledge, and the resulting social order. And I specify only play a part, not necessarily bring to fruition. So, and I tend to think that if this entire definition was presented to Dr. Boyer, and he probably would have had some questions at the very least, and maybe not just jumped on board with this.
Interesting statement. All right, we are going to stop there. I'm going to do my outro. Hold on, guys. Where are we? Where are we? There we go. All right, so like I said, if I lose my channel, if I'm unemployed, if whatever, if I have to put my dad, if I don't have money to pay for my dad's situation, he's going to have to go to a state institution, and that's not good. It's not what he wants. It's not what I want. So we're going to try to figure things out. If I lose this channel because of Douglas Beaumont, A, be ironic. B, I'll just go on to another platform. That's not a big deal. It's a big deal for me because I have 11 years worth of content on here, but you know, you win some, you lose some, right? But I have to fix my life either way. And if the hurdles become too big for me to fix, I still need to make a change. I got to pay off my debt, and I got to figure out what I want to do with my life and what I can do with my life. So that's what I'm doing going forward. I'm hoping I can fix everything within 40 days. That's my goal. But my hard deadline is 6 months, now a little bit less than 6 months. I have to fix everything. Assuming everything goes well, hopefully things will be great. But who knows? Anyway, as I say, forgive everyone for everything, including yourself. Remember, God loves you. God forgives you. So forgive others. Forgive your enemy. Forgive your friends. Forgive your neighbors, forgive your family, forgive yourself. And love them all, and love God above all.